Started off as an on-your-side investigation on behalf of a viewer has now turned into a statewide inquiry.
CBS 7's Matt Riss continues to search for answers on behalf of Sharyland customers. Tonight we've uncovered that it wasn't Sharyland who asked to hike the rates, but the PUC and special interest groups. Matt?
Jay Tatum, it's here in the businesses and homes of West Texas where residents are choosing to stay in the dark as electricity costs rise. And up until now, we've thought Sharyland Utilities was to blame. But after taking a closer look at the testimony, we discovered that Sharyland actually warned the states that residents would be shocked, a warning that went unnoticed. The pinch of electricity bills doubling and tripling hit hard in the farmlands of West Texas.
If you have to water and you use electricity, and your bills have doubled, I mean, you can't afford to do that.
Residents so fed up, they took action. Community meetings held as the shock set in.
So why is one entity, one company being given a 3 times rate than anybody else?
Those questions lead back to a 2013 rate case. It's a trial of sorts where the utility company appeared before the Public Utility Commission. The commission signed off on an increase in charges for residential customers while decreasing the rate for industry customers like oilfield companies. But when you take a closer look, it's not that Sharyland is actually getting more money, but more of the burden was placed on consumers. We pointed this out to Carol Bajitsky. She's worked in the energy utility sector since 1978, part of that time at the Utility Commission. She now heads up a group which fights for lower-income consumers in electric cases.
The Public Utility Commission, as far as I'm concerned, has dropped the ball because this case has raised rates in a way that just doesn't seem to be just and reasonable, and that's what a rate case is about.
All these meetings happened in Austin, and who decided the rates? Up until now, we've only known that Sharyland, oil companies, and special interest groups appeared before the council. In May 2013 testimony, Sharyland's own staff said, quote, "Moving immediately to fully allocated cost of service rates is in our view clearly undesirable. In particular, residential customers would experience significant rate shock, while large primary customers would receive large rate decreases." Months later, in November, Sharyland warned the PUC of how rates would impact customers, suggesting to leave rates, quote, "as close to existing delivery rates as possible."
Rate case process is an interesting process because it favors the people who are participating in it.
Carol says the outcome of this case is unusual, but not unexpected.
It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that the parties that are best represented in rate cases at the Public Utility Commission are usually the industrial customers because they have the money to hire the lawyers and like pay big bucks to get expert witnesses to come in and present their case for them.
Do you think this process was fair to consumers here?
The process was definitely not fair to consumers. All you have to do is look at the list of parties that intervened in the case. There is the utility, a bunch of industrial customers, and no one else.
There is an organization funded by a state appropriation, the Texas Office of Public Utility Counsel, or OPUC. They are charged with representing small businesses and the average consumer in these complicated cases, but they did not intervene on behalf of customers.
It's just too bad that in the rate proceeding before the commission where these rates were set, there was no one representing consumers, and it's obvious looking at the outcome of the case.
We set out to find why the state-funded OPUC did not represent the very people that are now so upset. We went to their Austin office, where we sat down with media spokesperson Michelle Gregg.
We are an independent state agency. We were created about 32 years ago specifically to represent the interests of residential and small commercial consumer classes.
Can you say why you guys weren't involved in that rate case?
That's a decision made by the public council, and the public council that made that decision is no longer our public council. So I don't know why that decision was made. I do know that our current public council is very, very concerned about what's happening with Sharyland customers, and so that has been a priority for us.
Have you guys recognized that perhaps things now for these folks might be different had OPUC been involved back in 2013?
It's hard for us to tell because that's a past case, and we'd have to go in and look at all the facts of it.
To find the answer ourselves, we've sent a public information request asking for copies of all internal communication involving Sharyland leading up to the rate case. We have not yet heard back. We took that same question to one of 3 public utility commissioners, the PUC, which oversaw the rate case.
The OPUC was not there speaking on behalf of consumers in this rate case. Does that raise any flags for you?
You know, I think it probably could have looked different had they been involved, and I hope that they're involved next time.
Is there anything you can do to ensure that in a case like this that could impact consumers so much that in the future OPUC is always involved?
That's a great question, and what I do know about this community going forward, which has been really inspiring, is that these folks are at the table and they're going to have their voices heard.
But is there anything that could be done to prevent them from getting in this situation in the future? A feeling like that they weren't represented and OPUC wasn't at the table during their rate case. Is there anything that could be done to prevent that in the future?
You know, we're always looking at better ways to communicate with the communities that we serve, and so we'll continue to look into that because it is an open process.
We brought what we found in our CBS 7 investigation to state lawmakers. They and the governor's office alone have the power to ask for changes to PUC or OPUC policy.
And the process has not been satisfactory at all.
But Senator Seliger fell short when asked if his office would help ensure that customers never went unrepresented in future cases.
It just really seems like the process is really not slanted in favor of consumers, and that
I've never thought the process was slanted in favor of consumers. That's why we have an Office of Public Utility Counsel, which is supposed to represent consumers.
Who wasn't involved in this 2013 rate case.
And there's a question, why weren't they involved? That's what they do. If they don't do that, what do they do?
After our interview, we emailed Senator Seliger's office twice, asking if they would draft a letter or make a change in light of what we found. Those emails were not returned. In the meantime, Representative Tom Craddock's office declined to interview, saying only his office was looking into the customers' concerns. There is no mechanism to ensure that the Office of Public Utility Counsel participates in every rate case. Even still, the PUC stands by its process.
Do you think this process was fair to these folks?
I do think it's a very fair and transparent process. Absolutely.
Even given that OPUC wasn't at the table, do you think it was fair to these folks?
I do think it's a fair and open process. What we need to look at now is, are the results sustainable?
Jay Tatum, tonight, lawmakers and officials are all saying the right things, but so far, no official commitment to make any changes. That's why I'm asking anyone impacted or anyone who just has a close eye on this story to please contact your local, state, and even federal representatives and voice your concerns.
Matt,
Tatum?
let me ask you a question. Will people see relief anytime soon?
Tatum, that's difficult to say. What we do know is that the PUC has launched a full investigation as a result of our questions. That investigation is expected to wrap up by July. The next thing folks can look to is a 2016 rate case. One thing that could happen in this investigation is moving that rate case forward. Again, these are all good reasons to reach out to your local and state representatives. Tonight, I'm live in Howard County. On your side, Matt Rist, CBS 7 News.
A CBS 7 On Your Side investigation has lawmakers and a state agency looking closer at rising charges for Sharyland Utilities customers.
Tonight, CBS 7's Matt Rist continues to look deeper into the process which decides those rates. It's a process that may not be accessible to consumers across Texas. Matt?
To understand the impact of rising Sharyland utility costs, I wanted to take you here to the Laird family home in Midland County, where they've seen their bill more than double since the first of the year. And this family is taking care of an aging mother, and that accounts for more than half of their disability check each month. It's making them make some tough choices of whether to buy prescription drugs for her or keep the lights on. And for families like this one, they've been in the dark about this rate change process until it was too late. Sharyland customers in West Texas came to CBS 7 with copies of their bills which showed a delivery charge rate increase of nearly 3 times what others are paying across Texas.
So why is one entity, one company being given a 3 times rate than anybody else?
It turns out Sharyland itself spoke out against the rapid delivery charge increase for consumers. It was one of many who intervened in a 2013 rate case, a rate case many in West Texas had no idea was taking place.
I have this big hearing. It takes like a year, and it's not at all set up for people like us to come to. It's just not.
A rate case is a months-long process where interested parties request to give testimony before a judge in a court-like setting. It all decides what you pay for electricity.
The rate case process is not designed for the average consumer. The rate case process has been designed for legal professionals and technical experts. And that is something that really must change.
That's Carol Bajitsky. She's been working in the energy utility sector since 1978. Part of that time spent at the Public Utility Commission. She now is the executive director of Texas Rose, which advocates for low-income electricity customers.
At this point, a utility is required to provide public notice of a rate increase, and this consists of one of those boring public notice ads that you see in the newspaper that most people would never even think of reading.
CBS 7 pulled the administrative requirements for notifying customers of planned changes to their rates. A letter to customers and 4 notices are required, published only in a local newspaper, while the law requires an electric company to show how much total money they will be getting from consumers. It does not require them to break down estimated bill costs to customers, making the notices difficult to understand. We also found it's difficult to complain. You must request to intervene in writing by mail to the Public Utility Commission in Austin. For this 2013 rate case, only 3 consumers submitted letters speaking out on the issue. One letter read, quote, "This is not easily understood by the average consumer of electricity." We asked the Public Utility Commission about the notification process.
So for even me reading the notice that they saw in the newspaper, I wouldn't have understood it. I wonder if that's something that you would consider looking at.
I think we're always open to evaluating new ideas.
Just to let them know we're tired. We're tired.
Back in West Texas, residents organized their own town hall meetings when they realized electricity costs were rising. No such meeting was held by Sharyland in the 2013 rate case. We found out there is no requirement from the PUC to hold public meetings in areas where rates are rising. It makes it difficult for residents to travel to Austin where meetings are held.
Surely, this process could be more open to the consumers that will be affected by it. And when those notices are issued, I think it would be a good idea if they already had a date set to hold a meeting locally in the service area at different locations so that people could show up and express their concerns.
We also brought that issue to the Public Utility Commission.
Is there any chance that in the future you guys could consider maybe branching things out from Austin and really going to the people that are going to be impacted to talk about rate cases before they're decided in Austin?
I think what's most important in this situation is that folks are aware of it and now they are involved.
It's a question that has caught the attention of State Senator Kel Seliger.
It's really difficult for the average consumer to understand leading up to a rate case just how much they're going to be paying. And I just want to ask you if you think there's anything that can be done to reevaluate that.
We'll discuss it, but keep in mind that an electric company that provides electricity over a very large area, they can go do these public meetings all over the place in any number, and then the cost of doing that goes into the rate too. And so you want to be careful that you don't have a process that exacerbates the effect of a rate increase. But yeah, we are always looking at those policies that affect rate making and affect communication and that affect ultimately the consumers.
Now, we just heard Senator Seliger saying there on camera that we should look more closely at this process. But after that interview, we followed up with his office twice by email. Those emails were not returned when we asked if they would follow that up with something in writing. As for Representative Tom Craddock's office, they declined an interview, though they did say that they are working with customers to file complaints. So what can you do now? I would really encourage everyone to contact their lawmakers and the Public Utility Commission to complain about this issue if you have some concerns with anything that we've uncovered. You can be sure that we will continue to track this story as the results of a PUC investigation are pending. I'd also like to take a moment to thank the Laird family for letting us into their home tonight, giving us a platform to tell this very important story. Tonight, I'm live in Midland County. On your side, Matt Rist, CBS 7 News.
Matt, thank you very much. We have posted details on our website at cbs7.com on how you can contact your lawmaker. You can also look them up at this state website. It's fyi.legis.state.tex.us. You can also contact the Public Utility Commission to file a complaint as they look closer into this problem.